My name's Dr. Domenico. I've wasted the first 5 minutes of this session not being allowed into this session for some technical reasons. I can't wait to go back to face-to-face meetings. I'm chair of Statisticians for Society, and welcome to this session today. We're going to be talking about the initiative of Statisticians for Society, but more specifically on the case study from Camille. So the structure of today's session is you're going to hear from me for 5 to 10 minutes, maybe 15. I went a bit long when I was practicing, talking about what this initiative's about. So for any of you who are interested in this, you should get a good explanation of the initiative and what it does. But more importantly, what you're then going to hear from is Phil and Camille, and I will introduce both of those just before we get to their part, about their experience with this. And theirs is going to be much more interesting than mine. But I will now just share my slides so you don't have to look at me. Let's go back to that. And we will get started. Cool. So this is today's session. As I've done the short introduction, which was my technical issues, we will go straight into the speaker presentations, and I will start right at the start. So Statisticians for Society, what's it about? Well, give me 10, 15 minutes. You're going to find out everything to do with it. So my name's Dr. Domenico. I am chair of Statisticians for Society, and I've been involved since its inception, where we essentially looking to see if we could connect charities and statisticians together for pro bono work. So the ultimate kind of one-liner is we're just trying to connect volunteers from the Royal Statistical Society with small charitable organizations to try and do some good work. So we want to give you expert help in regards to analyzing data, presenting data, just working with you in any kind of data statistical issues that you might have. And it was set up by the RSS to kind of allow its volunteers a place to give its volunteering time. And we found this from our members, that there was a kind of big need to want to volunteer and do more. And it was thought that this kind of initiative could essentially achieve that for its members, but help you charities by giving you access to expert statisticians who can work for free to do good work for you guys. That's the kind of basis of this. And just to say, if you have questions, pop them in the chat. We'll get to them in the Q&A session after we've had both of the talks. Who can request support? Well, basically, it's any third sector organization. So that could be a charity, a social enterprise, community interest group, anybody within the third sector. And you just have to be based within the UK. If you're based in the UK, you're good. But then you also need to have an annual income of less than £1 million. If you meet those, then you are eligible for this initiative. So if you're one of those charities, keep listening on. If you're not, still speak to us. We can still help you, aid you, put you in the right direction. We've had charities who have more than 1 million apply, and we can't necessarily get them into this initiative, but maybe we can offer some advice. So don't just turn off just yet. Why should organizations get involved? Well, we provide support that enables organizations to use data and evidence for decision making. And I think, this whole thing of data evidence decision underpins the Royal Statistical Society as a whole, but it's very important for a lot of you charities and in general, people want to be making decisions using data-driven decisions. But one of the keys is being able to do that in the correct way. And what you get the opportunity throughout Statisticians for Society is you get access to an expert statistician who can help you do that the right way. We can make the data look how we want, but it's very easy to draw wrong conclusions unless you necessarily know exactly what to do. And that's where we come in. And what this allows you, the charity, to do is kind of grow your network. And a lot of the time, one of the kind of really positive things of the initiative is it helps to build long-term connections. So we don't just give this out as a kind of one and done. Ideally, what we're looking to do is connect you with a statistician who's got an interest in what you do. And I think that's really important to understand, is when we look to match statisticians to a charity, we're looking for a general interest in the area, the work, the project as a whole. And if we get that right, a lot of the time what we see is post completion is a kind of a long-term relationship with that statistician and the charity. And it's also a good chance to build your knowledge in the area of statistics and data and how you should use it. Now, a lot of the time, charities have data, they have things they want to do, but maybe they don't necessarily have the expertise to do it, or they bring a statistician in at the wrong point. A good kind of case that we see quite a lot is, a charity applies to us. Oh, we've just run a survey. We need you to do the analysis. Now, in reality, it would be better to bring the statistician in before you've run the survey, to design the survey correctly, to essentially ensure everything you do will allow you to get the maximum out of your results. But a charity is not to know that. And so what we hope is, in connecting you up, you can kind of build up your expertise in the area of statistics, not just say, we don't want you to be able to do t-tests or understand p-values or, chi-squared tests, but what we want you to do is have a good understanding of data, how you use it, decisions you should make that can help you as a charity grow and, use data in a better way going forwards. And most importantly, we're funded by the National Lottery. So for you, the charity, you don't pay anything. So there's not a lot to lose, really, if you can get involved. And I'll be talking more about how that happens and how the initiative works. But when you do get involved, aside from the staff at the RSS, there are a lot of volunteers like myself who give up their time to kind of aid the project. And from a kind of a statistical point of view and a volunteer point of view, we have two over committees who kind of work within this. And the first is the scoping committee. The scoping committee oversees the program, the project, and we'll discuss with the organization to get an understanding of what you want. And I've done lots of these kind of calls with various charities. And what it is a charity may apply with an idea of what they want. And this idea could be as vague as, we have data, we want to gain insight from this data. You don't know how you want to gain insight. You may not know all the data you've got or what you could use. The scoping committee will then work with that charity to kind of formulate some project proposal. Some of the time, a lot of charities are really data savvy and they'll know exactly what they want. And it's a very straightforward task then. But don't feel that you have to have all the answers before you come to us. A general kind of question around, what can we do? Or we have this data, or we have this problem, can you help us? Is fine. And, I would say in most cases, 95% plus, we kind of can do something. But occasionally there might be a project where actually there's nothing that can be done, but it's not going to waste anyone's time in kind of doing that. And in applying, you're essentially saying, we want to speak to somebody from this committee to kind of give us an idea of what's going to happen. And then we have a review panel, and they're really important, and they review the work that's done, because you as a charity may not have the expertise to understand what you're going to get back and whether it's, correct. We don't just connect you with a volunteer and just let you go off and do what you want. We want to ensure that what you get at the end has been approved by somebody else, another member of the society. And in general, our members of the society, they adhere to a code of conduct. They're very professional in what they do. We've got some exceptional people involved in the kind of volunteering. You're going to hear from one later, but we do like to do the second check, just to check everything's fine and nothing's been missed and everything's going to be good. So you get that level of certainty with the review panel that it's been looked over by somebody else. And I think that's really important for peace of mind for the charities to know you've got that kind of thing in place. Now, the process itself is it's straightforward. There's a few steps to it, but it's very clear in terms of how it works. And we've refined this over time. We've worked with many charities, and we feel like we've got a nice process for you, the charity, and the volunteer, to ensure everything can go as smooth as possible. Now, stage one lies with you, the charity, approaching us, the RSS, although I'm technically a volunteer there, to show interest. And I'll give you the details on how you do that towards the end of this talk, so you can make a note of that then. Now, when you do that, the RSS staff will have an initial call with you. So we have a couple of staff members who will work on this initiative, because there's a lot of admin, especially if you're dealing with lots of projects. We're essentially running a consultancy to help charities, but with minimal funding. So they do some really good work in making sure everything kind of keeps going and it moves in the right direction. And that will be with you, the organization, to ensure that you meet the criteria and that you understand the process and that everything makes sense. Once we know that you're eligible for the this initiative, a call will be arranged with a member of the scoping committee. For example, I have a call arranged with somebody next week, which has just been arranged today, to talk through what they want to do. And that call will involve going through your project proposal or your ideas. And a lot of the time that scoper will be trying to garner more information about the charity, what you're doing, what you're aiming to do. And a lot of the time they can help you formulate what you need, what you might need from this project, or how a statistician can help. So they work with you, and we try to ensure that, you know, you're really happy. We don't want to kind of tell you what you want, but at the same time, we can kind of suggest things that you might need. And then it's up to you, the charity, to confirm that you're happy with it. Once you're fine with what we've done, you will have to sign off the scoping form, and we can then look to get volunteers involved in this project. So of the 8,000 plus RSS members, we have a proportion of those who've signed up for this initiative, who've said, we are actively want to be involved. And that stage is crucial, because we want people who are truly interested, and they will get the details on all the kind of projects that we've scoped. And then if anything meets what they want to do, they can then send an application, which in general is a CV and covering letter. And what we kind of want to see there is that the volunteer, A, is statistically competent, and B, has an interest in that charity. And you would be surprised, it's very often, and it's probably more times than not, a lot of the people who apply have a deep interest in what that charity is doing. Either they've worked in that area as a career, or they volunteered their own time to support it. And those types of kind of relationships work really, really well, or they just have a general interest in what you're trying to do. Now, once that's sent out, a volunteer will be selected by the scoper who best matches what the criteria is. That may not be a single volunteer as well. We may have multiple volunteers, or we may need multiple volunteers, or we may think it's good to pair two up. So for example, the RSS membership involvement in this part of our initiative is pretty diverse. We have young people, we all the way up to retirees. Sometimes if we want to get a young person involved who may not have the full experience, we'll pair them up with someone who is experienced and let them oversee the project and help, you know, the younger statistician gain a bit of experience if they're really keen to support this charity. And so we've done that before. Sometimes it's, you know, it can be any combination of that. And we will do that. We will select the volunteer, and then you've essentially got somebody to work on what you're doing. After that, we would start the project. So depending on how the scope goes, this could just be a case of just doing what the scope was for the project. So it could be data analysis of a survey, very straightforward. If, however, and this happens more often than you think, the charity doesn't know specifically what they want to do, it's more a question of, you know, we've got some data, we want to gain some insight. It may be a second kind of longer meeting, this initial meeting, where you're going through some more of the data, where that volunteer is then trying to flesh out what the proposal will be. If it's at that point, that will then go back to the scoping committee member, who will sign off that this is fine and that, you know, everything's aligned. And the reason we do that is just to make sure that there's no kind of deviations along this process. The journey kind of is as smooth as possible. Once that's all signed off, the volunteer just goes off and does the work. They might be working closely with the charity, they may not be. We will have a demonstration of that through Phil and Camille after this. And then post that, we will do, well, midway, we will do a review panel meeting. So your member of the review panel will meet with the volunteer just to go through how everything's working, just to ensure that we're kind of meeting what the project proposal was, that there's no deviation. If there is at that point, we can kind of pull things back in, we can make sure everything's going to get back on track, or we just ensure that everything's moving as we want it to be. In between those, you have the RSS staff. If you as the charity need to communicate back, or you have any issues, or, you know, something happens with the project, we've had projects that go on hold for various different reasons. We understand as charities, things can change and you may not be able to use that stuff straight away. Or we, you know, or maybe a volunteer has an issue where they can't continue. We will try and support all aspects of it. So you have a kind of support mechanism throughout this. Post this mid review, you then have the final project review, and this is where it's been peer reviewed. We've signed off on it. From that point of view, you can now get over all the outputs, reports, whatever was needed, and it's with you, the organization, to do what you need to do with it. And a final end of project call is arranged with the organizer then and volunteer, and that's essentially just to kind of finish it up, finalize everything was okay, get any feedback, make sure there was no issues in the process that we had, and just to kind of make sure everyone's happy with, you know, what occurred. And, you know, there's a point where you, the charity, if there was ever any issues, we can kind of formalize that, deal with it. Or most of the time, these go very smoothly. Everything's very positive. And ideally, we're looking for a really kind of positive outcome for everyone involved. Now, who will deliver your project? So I've briefly kind of touched on this. So this could be any fellow of the RSS. So as long as you're a member, paid member of the Royal Statistical Society, you're eligible to do this. You will have to have signed up to the scheme. So that in itself suggests that you want to volunteer and do the work. It doesn't just go out blanket to every member, because people have different kind of levels of participation within the society. We could work as part of a team or on your own. It will very much depend on the project, the requirements from the charity and the people who have applied. And fellows who register their interest are notified of the latest opportunities and can decide when to apply. So people aren't forced to apply. They apply because they want to help your charity. And that's the key thing. You know, we send this out, and people, if they're interested, have to actively get back to us. Like we encourage you, the charity, to come to us to say you want that help. So we're hopefully bringing together people who have really good interests in what you're doing and want to help you. Here are a few charities that we've helped, and we've scoped well over 50 charities, and we've got so many projects going at the moment. It's crazy. Obviously, COVID times affected the charities who came to us because we're going through a global pandemic. A lot of them had different things to think about. But since things have started to kind of come back to some degree of normality, we've seen many more charities now coming to us wanting help. And these are just a selection here. We have a few case studies that we've got. So these are testimonies from volunteers and charities, and I'm not going to do any kind of readout of what they put. I'll leave that there for you to read as I talk around it. But we've seen so many positive stories from this initiative. It's really good. You know, personally, I give up a lot of time to, you know, from my day job as a consultant to work on this. And it's really worthwhile. And when you see really good results and positive relationships, and, you know, a lot of kind of work that in many cases is really, really interesting. You know, it's not all, you know, simple data analysis. A lot of what these charities want turn into quite nice, complicated bits of work. From obviously a nerdy statistician, that's great. But it's just good to see that we can kind of do a lot of varied stuff for a lot of different charities. And it kind of is testament to the people involved in this, from volunteers, staff, to all our members who are trying to give up the time and do the actual work for these projects. Here are a couple more. I'll leave that up for a bit longer. And you'd be surprised at the kind of diversity of charities we have and the work we do. We've done research projects, we've done work on database migrations, we've done surveys. We've helped people kind of formulate plans around how to communicate to key stakeholders, things they want to do. And we do the kind of standard data analysis for funding, things that, you know, you'd expect a charity might want help with. We can do that, but we can go further and we can do different things. And so it's just really good to see a lot of these kind of projects and you know, what's happened with them. Most importantly, if you want to get involved or know an organization that would benefit from the initiative, all you have to do is drop us an email. So s4s@rss.org.uk. You are not committing to anything immediately, even if it's speculative, even if you need more information, of which you can find at the rss.org/statisticians for society. We're not going to commit you to anything at any point. You know, if you don't feel comfortable, if things aren't going to work for you, if you don't think you can make use of the work that we potentially could do, you are in control of this. You know, we are not obliged when we start to finish, and you dictate the timeframes as well. And that's kind of key. We have some charities who come and they really urgently need work done in, you know, a month, 6 weeks, maybe even less. We have others, and it's like, well, if we can get this done within a year, that's fine. And we work around what you want. You know, we're not trying to impose on anybody anything that they may need. And that is me. I will stop sharing my screen for a second. And so that's Statisticians for Society in a nutshell. But you're probably asking the question, that's great, that all sounds really good. And and personally for about a year, I've done talks like this where I've talked about the initiative. But now what's really exciting is we actually get to hear from people who participated and were involved in this. And we've got two of them coming up. We've got Phil and Camille. And Phil, just to give you some background, he's got a 15-year career rooted in marketing and management of community projects within the arts sectors. And since 2014, Phil succeeded as a key fundraiser for two small charities. Now in his 4th year with Intercare, that's Medical Aid for Africa, he has been primarily responsible for trusts and foundations fundraising, a role which relies heavily on written communications. Now, Phil enjoys developing so much that when the Royal Statistical Society's project was presented to him, he was keen to sign up, and we're glad he did. And in signing up, he got to work with Dr Camille, who's a chartered statistician, has been a fellow of the Royal Statistical Society since 2017. She has recently joined the Office for National Statistics, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with if you weren't before, as a methodologist, and she enjoys working across a range of projects, bringing together the subject matter expertise within multidisciplinary teams to support impact decisions from data analysis. Now, I think we're going to start off with Phil, so I will hand over to him, and we've got some slides from Camille in a minute. So I'm going to mute myself, Phil, and hand over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rob. That was really fantastic. So I don't have to say all that stuff because you've explained it so eloquently. Yeah, just to say, well, really, why am I here? Well, it's all the fault of cousin Sue. My cousin Sue told me about this project back in 2018 over a family barbecue, when I said I had this new job with Intercare. She said, well, what are you doing? I said, well, we send medical aid to Africa. She said, well, I've done that. I went to Africa and with Gifford and I've done all that. But you ought to talk to RSS because they've got this project. I said, great, I'll do that. And she looked at me as if to say, yeah, of course you will. But it's true. So then I did, and I got in touch. And I went through the whole process, just like Rob's outlined, applying and whatnot. And it went really well. At the time, I didn't know anything. I can barely pronounce statistician. In fact, that was a pretty good effort. A point of ridicule at team meetings. I can't even say statisticians very clearly. However, once I got signed up, I realised I wasn't just doing it to impress my new manager. As actually this was an opportunity that could make a real difference. And what difference did I want to make? Well, my initial aim was I could see that Intercare was a charity that was all about action. They were all about the doing. They weren't necessarily about evidencing anything. So, and as a trust fundraiser, as Rob said in the description, I'm using written comms as my primary tool to get through to trusts and foundations, to get them to donate, encourage new donors, and to show the current portfolio of donors that what they're doing is making an ongoing difference. So I really needed some statistics, and hopefully I was looking for some visual impact. Some graphics that was going to be easily digestible for trustees that I'm speaking to. Well, literally not speaking to. I think that's the point. If I could speak to them, then I could tell them these great things, and I wouldn't have to rely on written form of data. Now, my experience started back in middle of 2018, and it was a pretty slow burner. It wasn't. I wasn't looking for rapid results. I was happy just to take it piece by piece and be grateful for anything that I could get. But the first thing I had to do was to collect all the data, all the current questionnaires, all the current data that was available at Intercare. And to be fair, and I think Camille will back me up later, there wasn't really a lot. This was the heart of the problem. The heart of the problem is no one was really collecting data. They were saying, yeah, we did a questionnaire back in 2016, or talk to those volunteers. They remember what we did in 2012. Thinking that's no good. I needed something up to date. So what I did is I actually had to spend a lot of time doing my own data collection before I could even pass it on. When I managed to do that, this is when things started to happen. I was dealt with. I was very expertly collaborated with the management, and I think it was Amaka who was looking after me. And I was originally partnered up with an international volunteer statistician called David. Now, David was based in Africa, and I was happy to take that statistician, that volunteer, because I thought, well, he's in a country that we're sending medical aid to, so surely that's a great link. Now, on paper, or in the concept of that seemed good, but the reality turned out to be a little bit different. Now, I don't want anyone here to think that this is a negative or a bad part of the story, because this is a long roller coaster of a journey that I've been on with this project. But this was really where things started to get challenging. The main issue that I had with David was I couldn't really speak to him, not even as well as I'm speaking to all you lovely people now, because we were trying to, for example, use the telephone, and the connection in his country wasn't very good. So we just aborted that concept. We tried using Skype. This is back in the sort of middle of summer 18. We tried using Skype, and again, the connection would be in and out, and he'd be on his mobile phone, and it was just, I was really struggling to even get basic answers to basic questions. It makes this like super advanced communication, what we're doing today. So that was very challenging. But ultimately, what I did is I produced my documents to David, and David was able to send me essentially do a lot of research about the countries, because what I was after was, we have 5 countries that we send medical aid to. I wanted 5 simple documents that summarized what the difference that we were making, or show what the problem was, and then how Intercare was working towards solving it. David was able to do some great data research and present that, but what would happen is I would end up having to try to come up with improve the graphic, or trying to come up with a data sheet, and it was very text dense. The presentation, the layout, there was no negative space, and I felt that I was spending more time on it than what David was, and that led to a little bit of frustration for me, because I felt like, to be fair, if I really tried, I could have tried to do that as well. So I felt like, it wasn't really a balanced relationship. And with the communication issue, I couldn't tell him. I couldn't say, hey David, can we do this? Just like I could say to you now. So what I did is that I thought, well, this went pretty well. I got some good work from David, and I thought, well, let's park that. So David, let me just help you with your LinkedIn, because I noticed there's a few grammatical errors there, and I think you're a great guy, but I don't think we can continue with this relationship very much longer. So I helped him with his LinkedIn and wished him well. Went back to Amica for the Statisticians for Society. There, got it wrong. Statisticians for Society project, and said, Amica, is there any way I can have another volunteer? Because all as good as David was, and we did have documents produced, it wasn't the level that I was at. I wanted to take it to the next level. I wanted to hit my reader with great graphics, and even though the information itself was fairly straightforward, I wanted that to have the impact. I wanted the visual impact. So Amica was great. She said, yeah, okay, understand the problem, I'll get back to you. And this is where Camille, who you can see on your screens, this is where Camille came in. The first thing we did with Camille, you guessed it, we got on the telephone. And from that moment, all my tension was alleviated. It all just came out of me. We had this great conversation. Camille's, obviously, she's UK based, and this was a massive step forward. So it just really underscored the importance of, one, speaking to to my project manager, Amica, getting back to them to collaborate, and for 2, communicating so that we can move the project to the next level. So when I spoke to Camille, I realised that this was a person of different caliber. David was essentially a university worker who's still based in the academic world, and he was producing very academic-looking work. Whereas when I went to Camille, I felt she understood straight away that I was looking for something to help me sell my charitable organisation. And I didn't have to do very much except literally hand over all the documents that I had so far and say, make them look great. Which I'm going to tell you in a minute, she went on and did. So the two main products that I'd requested from the beginning that we were seeking to create was 5 two-page documents to show the benefits in each country that Intercare provides medical aid for, and then also sort of an overview report to show the evidence of the impact that we have and make us look very important and viable, or both, in fact. Important and viable, just a very important looking document, and that's what we're after, to add weight to my applications that were already looking good, but I thought they could look better. So yeah, basically I got excellent results and all the support, all the graphics that I wanted. Camille's going to go and show you what she did there. But at the end of the day, again, this process was really a very long process, and I was very happy with that, because I was saying to everyone at every stage, I would rather get it right long term than rush it and have documents and send them out. Because this is the pace that, even though I'm speaking quite quickly today, this is the pace that I work at with trusts and foundations. I was spending 2 or 3 months or more just waiting for maybe an answer or an acknowledgement. So to work at this pace, it suited me, and I was in a permanent job, so I didn't have to find funding quickly, which I'm aware that other charities are having to do, and or what I've always had to do. So there was that luxury and that privilege. The outcome is, that Camille has ended up staying on with Intercare, albeit in a very small way now, because she's extremely busy in her role. Just to give an example of that, she was helpful in summarising the financial and actual consignments of aid outputs summary that I presented to the AGM in 2019 and in fact 2020. So supporting with a graphic sheet that, using her expert abilities to pull that information out and allow me to show it very clearly to people that weren't familiar with that type of information. So let's just check if there's anything else. Yeah, so just to sort of conclude and summarize, so Phil, you might be asking, you're sitting there listening to this thinking, well, what was the feedback, what were the benefits to you directly? Well, the hard benefits obviously was what I've described. I've got documents that support what we do, albeit they're slowly going out of date. But again, we're such a small charity, it's hard to collect more information and update it, other than the very basics that most businesses and charities would have. So really, in terms of soft benefits, they would be improving the confidence of, in fact, my whole team, to say, look at this, look at what we've done in these years, look at the level in which we're helping. So that confidence, being able to approach funders and say, this is clearly our input, and also this filtered down from the staff team down to the volunteers, and then also the trustees and other supporters at an AGM, where they can see clearly what is a very complicated concept of our charity, which is collecting medical surplus from the UK, packaging it up and then sending it to Africa. I mean, it's very, very complex. It's not simple. But to see a graphic or just have one sheet that just summarized the success in a year or a period is infinitely useful, and everyone at Intercare is really grateful. So thanks for listening.
Cool. Camille, let's go straight over to you. Do you want me to share these slides?
Yeah, please go for it, Rob.
Yep.
I don't think I have a lot to add now, because I think most of it's been covered by Rob and Phil already, which is great. I think from my point of view I think that's kind of what Phil said. He knows the story. He knows what the charity do, and the work in country. And from my side, as a statistician coming in, I don't know any of this. And yes, I can look at the numbers and talk about the numbers, but to give you a quick secret, please don't share too widely outside, is that looking at numbers is not really helpful, to be honest. The numbers, they don't talk. They don't tell you any stories. And you need to put these numbers into context. And I think with this report and the work with Phil, why it works so well, is that I got the context and the stories from Phil. And my job is just looking at the numbers and making them tell that story, kind of translating all the messages Phil was giving me to be able to produce this kind of report that's a mixture of pretty plots and tables that just give some flesh to what people knew from the context in countries. And it's kind of my work. And that wasn't actually really hard to do. I had all the insider information from Phil to really help. So that's kind of the main thing. The second part of the deliverable, so the first one was this meaty report. And then I think Phil alluded that what he needed, if you want to change the slide, Rob,
yep,
was to have this kind of 2-page summary for fundraiser for each countries. And actually, I think at the end, we ended up to a 1-page per countries to give to the funders. And I think Phil said it very well. The idea is that they are to be raising money. So they have to be visual. They have to be super accessible, because the people reading those documents, they don't have time. They don't have time to read. They probably don't have time to speak to someone to go through the detail. So you needed to be able to convey all the information within a few second attention on 1 page. Just bang, and that's the message. And again, we started with something like this, which is just a mock-up. And just to say, come on, Phil, is that what you have in mind? Something very small, a few bullet points, no more. And we had a lot of discussion. And there were maybe a few phone calls, but mostly by email, I think, if I remember correctly. And then we ended up, if you move to the next page, to something like that. So just filling it in with a lot of back and forth. And at that point, I'm probably an okay statistician, I would say by now, but I am not a graphic designer. It's not my skill. I can do pictures, I can do visualization, but there it was very much, let's try this. And then I send you an email and a draft and an example. And then Phil was able to come back and say, yes, that's meet my need, or no. And we had a lot of back and forth. And we updated them a bit. But that was it, really. There wasn't a lot more to do about that. And that's kind of what I wanted to say, was just a big collaboration with Phil and discussion. And for me, the final point from all this journey is people talk about data, and they talk about evidence, and they talk about impact. And you hear that everywhere at the moment, if you're in charity. But at the end of the day, it's all about people and the story behind the numbers. It's not about just data for data. And I think those statisticians will come in, the importance is about what you do with it and about the people.
It's a great way to end that. Guys, we've gone a tad long, 2 minutes, which is mostly my fault for rambling. There are a couple of questions in the Q&A. If you want to send them to s4s@rss.org.uk, I will answer them. I will make sure they get to me and I will answer them. If you're just over the threshold on the money side, send it in. And if you have, there's a couple on there about rules of thumb and support hours, please send it in. We'll get back to you with proper answers. But I just want to thank Camille and Phil. Thank you, Camille, for doing the work, Phil, for applying. You've demonstrated how good this is. Thank you all for attending. And guys, enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks, Rob.